everyone, my name is Wendy Ivy Martinez. I am a geek, and today we are going to be doing my September reading wrap-up. September reading wrap-up, September reading wrap-up. Let's get started. So if you guys didn't see, I let my tarot cards pick my TBR for September, and I had planned, I grabbed 12. I did manage to read 11 books this month, so let's just go ahead and talk about the books that I finished, including the one that I don't think I'm going to be finishing today because I'm not going to be home. September was a little bit of a flop for me. My opinion is an opinion and is not definitive. So let's go ahead and get started with my first 2-star read from September, and that happens to unfortunately be Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I had read maybe like 6 or 7 other books by Colleen Hoover, so in my eyes previously Colleen Hoover could have done no wrong, but boy was I sadly, very unfortunately mistaken with Ugly Love. We follow our main characters, Miles and Tate, and Miles is this guy who has a very mysterious past, and there's something wrong with him and his love life, and there's a reason why he can't accept love into his life. But Tate, because she has such a hectic schedule, she decides to take what she can get because, you know, a woman has her needs, and so they decide to enter this like friends with benefits sort of situation, knowing that it can't be anything else because Tate is always so busy. She literally has no days off. And then we have Miles, the guy that for some reason can't accept love and romance into his life, and we're going back and forth into his past as we see him enter a relationship and really do fall in love and see that he is a wonderful person, and we're just trying to figure out what caused him to be this way. And I was unfortunately very disappointed by this book. It started from the very beginning. I love the name Miles. I love the name Miles. The character Miles, though, I did not like Miles at all. I didn't like our 2 main characters, which is a huge flaw. If you don't like the characters you are consistently following throughout the book, you don't like the book. Tate was infuriating, was annoying, and Miles was like the biggest F-boy if there was one, okay? Like, neither of them had any redeeming qualities to me. I did not like these characters. And by the time we found out what happened to Miles to make him this way, like, yeah, it's upsetting. Yeah, I can see why he became this way. I didn't have a connection with him. I never did. I never rooted for Tate and Miles to be together from the very beginning. Why I'm gonna give it 2 stars and not 1 is because I realized that Colleen Hoover always does something with her covers that links it up to something that's revealed within the story. She did it with Verity. She did it with Reminders of Him. I feel like every book that Colleen Hoover writes, her covers are very thoroughly thought out, that when I first looked at it, I'm like, why? Okay, Ugly Love, why is it underwater? Why is there bubbles? Like, I didn't get it. But after reading it, and you know what happens, and everything is revealed, I am like, wow, now I know why the cover is this. The next book that I picked up was one that I had high hopes for. It was my Fool card. It was my New Beginnings pick for the month, and I was so excited to read it. I was so excited that when I bought this book on Amazon, I almost bought the whole series, and thank goodness I did not, because this book took me 2 weeks, and it's not a thick beat, okay? It's like 300 something pages, and it took me 2 weeks to finish. That's sad. That is sad. I disliked it that much. And that, unfortunately, is A Court of Blood and Bindings by Lisette Marshall. So this I almost DNF'd it quite a few times, but then I saw that people were like, oh, you should listen to the audiobook, it's a lot better, la 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 la, I followed the audiobook is good, la la la. So I decided to get the Audible version of this and follow along while I was reading, and even then it was a drag. At first I was like, oh, this is a little bit better. It's not. It's not. In this story, we follow our main character Emmeline? Yeah, Emmeline. So Emmeline has magic. Okay, Emmeline has magic, and she is raised by her human parents because she's human. And because she has magic, and everybody knows she has magic, she is seen as like less than. They don't like people that have magic. And basically in this world, humans are against fays. And the humans build this wall of iron that separates the fae from humans, and so the humans feel like they're safe and protected because there's no way that the fae can overcome iron. And then we see Emmeline as she is trying to fix this stain on her dress, and she calls upon color magic. So the way that this magic system works is with colors. Red is for destruction, yellow is for change, and then blue is for healing, I believe. So she can literally take colors and make magic out of it. And as she's doing this and trying to fix her apron, the silent death comes behind her, and she's like, whoa, there's a fae this fae is not supposed to be here. And she goes to tell her parents, and her parents are like, oh, you're crazy, you know, the fae can't come. And, you know, they think that she's making it up because she wasn't invited to the party. Whatever. That night, she goes to sleep. Her whole town catches on fire. And then this silent death fae guy takes her, abducts her, and takes her to his court, the Crimson Court, I believe. And then we're just following them, okay? And he's, like, teaching her how to use her magic, and it gives me very much like it's pretty much a ripoff of A Court of Thorns and Roses, and he very much reminds me of like Rysand. You know, he reminds me of him, but it's just not as interesting. There's not that much action that happens. There's not that much that happens at all, and like the characters fell really flat for me. Like even the love interest, I was like, eh. You know, like, it's just, there was nothing that made me want to keep flipping its pages. You know, the story was boring, the characters were boring, not that much happened. And even in the beginning when it was supposed to be a little more fast-paced, it still wasn't enough to have me hooked. So this one fell flat for me, and I am probably not going to be continuing this series. So next, let's go to my 3-star reads. Woo! So my 3 stars are basically books that I didn't hate, but I didn't exactly like love. You know, they were okay. And the first one that I have is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I know. Why do I keep reading Ali Hazelwood books after she's flopped like 3 different times for me? The Love Hypothesis was really good. I didn't think it was worth the hype, but it was good. And then Love on the Brain actually was worth the hype for me. That one I feel like deserved more praise. And then I read her novellas, which all flopped for me. This one was more in the middle. Ali Hazelwood just becomes very repetitive with her characters. Her characters have no new qualities. They're not written differently. They're all pretty much the same characters and almost the same story. We have like the miscommunication trope. We have, you know, like it just all becomes very repetitive, and you just feel like you're reading about the same few characters. The only one that I was like, oh, this is awesome, was because they had the guy that Olive falls in love with from The Love Hypothesis. It has them in it, which I think was awesome. Gave it extra points. But in this one, we follow this girl who is on this app, and you can hire her to be your girlfriend. However, you can't do any adult things. That's all off limits. You basically just hire her, and she impresses your family, blah, 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 and then you guys break it off. Now, she is a fake girlfriend to this guy, and she tells this guy's family that she's a librarian, this and that, and then she meets his brother, and his brother's like not falling for it. He's like, nah, like you are not his girlfriend. There's something very fishy here. And then sure enough, she is actually trying to get a job for this science thing as an experimental scientist, I think, something like that. And she's trying to get some sort of job, and he happens to be the head of that department that determines whether she gets a job or not. And he's like, I thought you were a librarian. And then the story goes from there, and there's that miscommunication trope and all that jazz. And it was, like I said, it was okay. It wasn't that memorable for me. I don't remember it that much. And yeah, so that's Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. The next 3-star read for me this month is Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. This book is about a girl who goes back to town because her mom owned a resort, and her mom ends up passing it away and then passing it over to her daughter. And her daughter, and years ago, she was supposed to meet this guy at the resort, and he never showed up. Come present time, he ends up checking in, and right away they bump into each other and they remember each other, and they have to work together because I guess the mom hired him before she had passed away to help fix the resort that the daughter's taking over. And their love story ensues from there, and we are getting glimpses going back and forth in time between what happened between them. And it's cute. At first I had initially rated it 4 stars, but the more I thought about it, the more I just knocked down a star because it wasn't that memorable to me while I was reading it. It was quite enjoyable, but it wasn't something that sticks out in my mind as like, oh yeah, this is such a good read. This is such an amazing story. No, it was okay. It was a fun little light-hearted read, I guess, but nothing that's going to really impact you in a very strong sort of way. I have one more 3-star for you guys, and that is The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. Now, this book I thought I was going to enjoy a lot more. I initially was like, okay, maybe this is like a 3.5-star read, but again, this is a book that's not as memorable as I would have hoped, and a lot of times I just remember dozing off just because it didn't have anything that really hooked my attention and that kept my attention. But first, before we get to all that, let me just tell you what this book is about. This book is about our woman is about a woman. Her name is Eve Black. She's our main character. And she basically, and when she was 12 years old, her family got murdered by this killer who never got caught, that they deemed called the Nothing Man. Now, as an adult, Eve decides that she wants to go after this Nothing Man. So then she writes this book about him that basically tells her audience everything that she knows about the Nothing Man to try to really bring him to justice. And we get the POV of Eve, and we also get the POV of the Nothing Man himself, who is named Jim Doyle. So we know who it is initially, right away, right off the bat. We know who this character is. We know who the Nothing Man is. Now it's only a matter of, will Eve ever bring him to justice, or will Jim get his final revenge and, you know, off unalive Eve? Because as he gets this book and he has it in his hands, he gets more and more furious the more that he reads, because he is realizing that Eve is pretty close to finding out exactly who he is, and he's like, okay, I may just have to finish what I started all those many years ago. So this book, the concept, phenomenal. And I have to say, if I had gotten more of Jim Doyle / the Nothing Man's perspective, the serial killer's perspective, it would have been like at least a 4 to 5-star read for me, because I loved reading from his head. He had such an effed up point of view. His way of thinking was really weird and a little bit dark, but not as dark as I had anticipated, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading from this serial killer's point of view so much. And Eve, we get Eve's perspective, but we're actually technically reading Eve's book. So there was parts in there that was like, I get it, it's supposed to be this fake book that she's writing about the Nothing Man, but I just feel like it had a lot of like nonsense things that we didn't necessarily need in the story, and the story could have been wrapped up a little bit quicker. Or we could have gotten more of Jim Doyle's perspective, because I loved being in his head. I loved being in his head. My final rating, like I said, was 3.5. We're gonna give it another half star, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so now let's get to my 4-star reads. So for my 4-star reads, I only have one, and that is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. I just finished this book today, and I really enjoyed it. I went into it completely blindly. All I knew was that it's about a couple that kills together. They're like serial killers together. But that's all I knew about it, and goodness did it blow me away just not knowing anything about it. We basically we get the perspective mainly of our main character, who is the husband to his lovely wife, Millicent. And Millicent is on the outside just perfect. She's beautiful. She is doing well. She has a terrific job. She has amazing kids. She has the perfect husband. But deep down, Millicent really likes to unalive people. And that's what this couple does. That is their hobby. So what they do is they send the husband in, and the husband picks out the right woman for them. And he basically charms her. He'll basically charm the woman, tells them that he's deaf, and basically writes to them on his phone and is like, hey, I'm deaf, blah, blah, blah. And little by little, the woman gets charmed by him, and he begins seeing the woman, and he tells his wife whether this fits their profile that they want, or if this woman doesn't. And if she does, then Millicent then takes over, kidnaps the woman, and will unalive her to help his wife. It is their healthy extracurricular activity that they like to do together. And things begin to get dark and twisted when the husband finds out that Millicent is not just keeping these women and unaliving them right away, but she is slowly torturing them in very horrific and gruesome ways. And he's like, wait a minute, there's something else going on here. And then from there, the story ensues, and there's so many like twists and turns. It was pretty predictable, but I enjoyed it so much. Okay, it was so good. It was dark and twisted to a tasteful point, not to a gruesome point, not to a disturbing point, but just enough. So now let's move on to my 5-star reads. The first 5-star that we're going to talk about is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Preston. I loved this book so much. I was blown away. So I checked it out on my Libby app, not knowing, I literally did not look at the synopsis at all. I did not know anything about this book. It popped into my like, oh, it's ready to borrow. I borrowed it, and I was blown away by this story. So we follow a woman whose aunt just passed on, and her aunt leaves her very luxurious Upper East Side sort of apartment, and she works for this publishing company, and she is in love with her job. Like, her job is her life. Her job is her love. She does not know anything but her career. She has no time for friends. She has no time for love. She has no time for anything. So surprise, surprise, she goes into her apartment one day and finds this young man there, and she's like, who the heck are you? You have no keys here. How did you get into my apartment? And then she realizes that he belongs 7 years in the past. So this apartment that she was passed down from her aunt was actually a kind of a time traveling apartment where the past and the present collide. And so she slips in 7 years in time, and she meets this guy from the past who obviously doesn't know that she's from the future. And a love story ensues, even though her aunt tells her The only thing that you cannot do in this apartment is fall in love. Do not fall in love in this apartment, okay? Because it never goes well. Time loops, multiverses, all that stuff gets to me, man. Like, I love me some sci-fi-ish elements like that. I love that. Give me more time loops. I need more books of time loops. I'm discovering that I love time loops very, very much. Every book that I've read that has a time loop in it, I'm just like, yes, sign me up. I'm obsessed. 5 stars, hands down. Speaking of time loops and multiverses and parallel dimensions and all that, we have our next 5-star read. So this one I'm going to show you guys as a series. It is 3 different books, mangas. I read Orange Volume 1, Volume 2, and then Orange Future. So the first 2 are pretty big chunkers, and then the last one is a lot smaller. But these books were so good. The series, so good. So freaking good. So I'm gonna say this as a whole, even though they are individually counted as 3 different books that I read. But as a whole, the series was a 5-star read. I gave 5 stars, 5 stars. This one I gave 3.5 stars because it's just sort of filled in the gaps. It was kind of like a filler book. So it wasn't anything, I mean, it was nice to have because we got to see what happens after the story ends. But it's just a filler. You know what I mean? But these 2, loved, blown away, absolutely obsessed. Hand me down, hands down, the second best book that I've read so far in 2023. Right after Fourth Wing, I was obsessed. I was obsessed with this series. So in this series, we follow our main character who is entering 11th grade. Her name is Naho, and she's going into 11th grade, and she gets this letter from herself. And she opens it up, and it says, "You from 10 years in the future." And of course, Naho at first is like, okay, that ha ha ha, very funny. This is obviously a prank. This is a joke. This can't possibly be real. But then as she's reading the letter, it tells her the exact date, and she's like, today you overslept. This is the first time that you've overslept. And you're going to be getting a new student today who is a transfer student from Tokyo. And as soon as she reads that part, this boy comes in and her teacher announces him as a new transfer student from Tokyo. And the name matches the name that was written in the letter. And the letter says, basically, you have to protect this boy at all costs because not even a year from now, he will be gone if you don't save him. You're the only one that can save him. And it's just so good. And then the story just goes from there. And then we go back and forth in time. So we see the future, what happens after this boy, they end up losing this boy who they get really close to, and what the future looks like without him, and how sad they still are after 10 years after losing him. And then we see the past and just see Naho desperately trying to save him. And it's just so good. Like, I laughed, I cried, and I cried like so many times. This book just evoked so many emotions, and I absolutely loved it. And like I said, I love me time loops. Give me time loops, give me multiverses, give me parallel universes, give me, you know, back and forth in time loops, time loops. I love it. So the next 5-star read is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. This book, chef's kiss. My 3rd favorite book of the year. I was absolutely obsessed. Loved this book so freaking much. So in this book, we follow a very, very strongly religious town that is very religious, and we follow our main character Rose. Now Rose is very strict on her religion. She loves her religion. She loves God. She is very dedicated to her family. She is very dedicated to her religion. However, little things start to slip. One day she's out with her friends and she sees this thing, this demon. She sees this demon, and then she starts to see this demon more, little by little. She gets closer to this one girl who she is like, oh, this is my friend, blah, 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 blah. And the more she gets closer to this girl, the more she sees this demon. And then it ends up killing off her little friend. And then she's like, okay, something's not right here. And the story ensues from there. So all that's going on, and it's somehow tied into this Camp Damascus, which is a gay conversion camp. Not gonna tell you how it's tied in, not gonna tell you what happens. It's just, this book is so good. Okay, it has so much social commentary about gay conversion camps. It has so much commentary about how gay people are treated, how religion treats them, how traditional religion treats them, how they are viewed by still yet in society today by so many people in the world. It's just so good. It is so good. I freaking loved this book. The quotes in here, I want to reread this whole thing just to like literally bookmark all kinds of quotes, because the commentary in here about the gay community, about how they're treated, about religion, it's just so good. It's so good. This is a book that's like, you can be read time and time again and you will get something new out of it. There's just so much commentary in here. I loved it. I loved it so much. Okay, so the last book, I technically haven't finished it yet, but I'm more than halfway. I'm 300 pages into this 490 page book. Okay, so more than halfway done with it. And that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I'm gonna have a whole reading vlog to this because you guys know Fourth Wing is my bae. Fourth Wing is the best book I've ever read in my whole entire life. This book has often been compared to Fourth Wing, and I even had a few friends tell me that they liked this one more than Fourth Wing. And I'm like, oh heck no. So I had to see what all the hullabaloo is about, and I just started it like a day or two ago and I'm obsessed. I can't put it down. But I will have a whole reading vlog and I will give you my definitive answer if I think that this book is better than Fourth Wing, because it's tough right now, okay? We'll be done in October. We'll give my final thoughts. Please stay tuned for the reading vlog, because I really want to see if this book is going to be better than Fourth Wing, and I will be rereading Fourth Wing next month in October as well, because, I mean, Iron Flame is coming out in November. So that is everything that I read in September, you guys. Let me know, have you guys read any of these books before? What is your opinion on them? If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to be notified when I post. I post 3 times a week. I also post some shorts on here. I also have the link to my Booktok down below, as well as my Amazon wish list and all that jazz. My Goodreads as well. Please add me on Goodreads. I would love to have more friends on there. Yeah, and see what you guys are reading too. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!